Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, what's the first question then, please?
I know you have a blog,
Yes.
and I would like to know, do the prisoner know about the blog, and do the guards in the prison know about the blog?
Okay, the prisoners know about the blog, and do the guards in the prison know about the blog? When my blog was first started, I was in a maximum security jail, where the guards were murdering the prisoners, and we couldn't let the guards know at that point in time. So that's why we called it John's Jail Journal, instead of putting my name on it.
Yeah.
When I was sentenced, I was moved to the Arizona Department of Corrections, where the guards weren't murdering the prisoners like they were at the maximum security jail. It was the other way around, actually. Each building unit was named after a guard that had been murdered by a prisoner. So we felt safe at that point, and that's when my name was released, and the prisoners did find out that I was writing the blog, because they don't have internet in prison, but family members would send them printouts of news stories, and that's how they found out. And that's how prisoners were coming up to me. Some of them were asking me to put their stories on the internet, and others were threatening me never ever to write about them, or else, you know, they would smash me.
Yeah.
So, and then over the years there was different reactions to it from prisoners and guards. Prisoners I started writing about started to get books and letters sent to them from all over the world, from people, complete strangers who've been reading about them. They loved that, because they thought they would never communicate with anyone outside of prison again. Most of them, like two Tonys, were serving 112 years. He thought it was the coolest thing in the world that some teacher out of Singapore could write him a letter and ask him about his mafia life. And when I did have problems with certain people in prison, the guys who I was writing about my blog, they all stood up for me, because if I get smashed, I get moved, and I can't write their stories anymore. And we all became really close friends as well. So it was like this little community formed in the prison around the blog. It was pretty cool. Yeah. Since I got released, the Arizona Department of Corrections has classified my blog and my book as a threat to the security of the institution. And the prisoners who write for me were all pulled out of their cells and told that they're no longer allowed to write to me. Tell prisoners they can't do something, and they'll try and figure a way around it. So they send their letters to somebody else, and he forwards them to me. Freedom of expression is guaranteed under the Constitution in America, so it's illegal for the prison to stop them from writing to me and expressing their viewpoints and putting them on the internet. Arizona was the first state to stop prisoners putting things on the internet. I think it was around 2000, and the reason was there was a pen pal ad put out by a murderer who described himself as a kind-hearted lover of dogs, and the murder victim's wife read that, and she took it to court, and they introduced these laws to stop prisoners putting things on the internet. The ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, challenged it in a higher court, and the judge said our freedom of speech was guaranteed under the Constitution, so we allowed it to continue. But prison can make things very hard for you if you're blogging and saying things. They can move you into a cell with a rapist, or they can make things really uncomfortable. Shannon Clark, who was just recently released, he started a blog inspired by my blog. I met him in prison. He was one of the first people I started blogging about. And his blog, Persevering in Prison Pages, he started naming guards and higher up staff members and all this stuff. And in the last year, they moved him 5 different times to 5 different prisons. Now, getting moved in the prison is like the most stressful thing in the world. You got to strip search, you go for all your property, throw things away. You got to deal with a whole new bunch of people at each prison yard. So they made it really uncomfortable for him, and he lost a year of his good time, but he continued to blog. So they kept him in it for a year extra, but he continued to blog. So he's an extremely brave person indeed. And the most recent thing on my YouTube channel is a conversation I'm having with him. I'm interviewing him about the perils of prison blogging. So it might be something for you to look at that would give you more information to answer that question. I think I've prattled on quite enough.
Okay.
Okay, do you have another question, or do you want me to go to the next? We can keep going around, do one question each person.
Okay. In the extract that we read, yesterday, you're talking about a guy called Bud.
Yes.
And I was wondering how long it actually took him to stop being so aggressive to you, if he ever stopped being aggressive to you or anything.
He never stopped being aggressive to me.
Okay.
He's the one who threatened me with the padlock in the sock, and he was getting higher and higher on heroin and crystal meth. And first thing he did was he had one of his mates attacked me when my parents had flown over to visit me for Christmas. 20-stone California biker. I'm, you know, the visits is what you look forward to the most. This guy comes up behind me and smashes me, and then I didn't have much of a chance. He was 20 stone, kickboxer, all this stuff. So back in the cell then, Buddy's getting high on heroin and crystal meth, interrogating me all night long, keeping me awake, showing me the padlock in the sock that he's going to smash my head in with. And I got so scared it was the only help. I called for outside help. I put a call in. I had my parents call the British Embassy, and they got me moved out of that cell. But it had to be very delicately handled, because if the embassy had called and said he was threatening me, that would have made me a snitch. And the gang rule is all the prisoners would want to kill me. Because snitches and sex offenders are the lowest in the low in prison. I got moved and I didn't get in trouble. He was mad. He came charging down the stairs, threatening me right away. And I'm going to find out what's happened. If you snitch me out, you know you're dead. And if I get moved, I don't kill you and I get moved. I know so many people here who will kill you. You know, he's saying all this stuff. And he found out I told the truth that the embassy had called. I said that we were just incompatible. That was, you know, I didn't say he threatened me. And it died down with him, but some of his associates. When I wrote about the prisoners using items you can buy from the inmate store to make syringes that they could shoot up with, I put a blog on the internet about that because I thought it was interesting for the public. I didn't name anyone's names who was doing anything. And an old Aryan brother on another yard put out a green light to have me smashed for putting their secrets on the internet. And that caused a whole load of chaos that was ongoing for about 2 or 3 days, with including the guy who smashed me earlier, you know, in the back, the big biker guy. But 2 Tonys, the mafia guy who I was writing for, and all the other guys stood up for me, and that situation ended up going away. Yeah, and T-Bone stood up for me as well. Do you remember T-Bone? Not many people messed with T-Bone and came out well. Okay, next question.
I don't know which one to ask. With like the aggressive inmates, like the most aggressive inmates, what were their crimes? Were they really bad crimes, or were they like petty crimes? Like,
Okay, here's the thing about prison. You have to put on an aggressive front. Everyone does. Now, the media portrays prisoners to be violent monsters and sex offenders, rapists, murderers. The media drums that into the public and creates a big misconception actually, because most prisoners who are going into prison are non-violent drug offenders. That's the vast majority of prisoners are non-violent drug offenders. So, over time in prison though, they're more than likely than not to commit an act of violence, because prison is such a violent place. It criminalises people further, it sends them further down that road. If you're a young person who's been busted smoking pot, for example, and you've been sent to prison for a couple of years, which I saw happen. I saw people get up to 5 years for a marijuana roach in Arizona, if they had a prior conviction. If you're someone like that going in, and then these gang members come up to you right away and try and recruit you, to join the gang you have to commit acts of violence. To earn your tattoos, you have to commit acts of violence. And the more serious the act of violence, higher up in the gang are the tattoos that they earn. So it's like a school of violent crime. And there's no education, there's no rehabilitation. You've got 2 guards watching hundreds of prisoners, so it's completely gang controlled. And that's to keep the costs down. That's why they have few guards and no education and no rehabilitation. To keep the costs down, because the prisons in America are making massive profits off all the people coming in. They get $50,000 a year per prisoner. So they want them to be further criminalised. They don't want them to get jobs and succeed in society. They want them to come right back. So there are different levels of violence.